transmission mounting point on the 44 RE in combination with the 5.2 that's installed now. It's much further forward than the previous setup was. So I'm probably 10 inches or so in front of where the old transmission mount is on the skid plate that's under the Jeep right now. So I made up a new transmission mount that'll bolt to the skid plate that's under there. And basically I just used some 1-inch square tubing, 3/16 plate. So see, I cut it at an angle to match the angle of the transmission mount, and then just welded together both of them. These slots are where the bolts or the transmission bushing will go through. So here we just have a spare bushing. I'll have to drill some holes, slots on the actual skid plate so I can get the nuts up through to bolt the bushing on. Probably just bolt through here, 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 and here. Made this as wide as I could to try to distribute the load. So I'll probably have, I'm guessing, around 500 pounds or so on it. The other option for this was to buy a pre-made transmission mount that may or may not have worked. I found one that's made by Rubicon Express, I believe, that actually goes to one of their skid plates. They have some kind of a flat skid that's made for long arm kits, I believe, and they had a transmission mount somewhat similar to this, so it's just made out of bent sheet metal, which you typically can't buy separately, but I called up 4-wheel parts, I believe it was, and they had actually had a couple extras sitting around, but they were somewhere around 50 bucks to ship out. So I just used some scrap to make this one for free. It's going to be a lot stronger since it actually has some thickness to it rather than being bent sheet metal. Basically, to make this, I just took 1-inch square tubing here and here for the back piece. Made a cut on the left side that you're looking at. Basically pitched it for, I think it was 5.7 degrees is about where my the angle my transmission was at. So I just cut a slice out of it to make the bar go at that angle. Left the rear side alone, so there's only a weld on one side of this one. And on the smaller one here, I had to take some off of both sides. And just welded real short stretches at a time to try to keep it from warping. And I also bolted or clamped the bars to a piece of thick angle iron that I have to keep them from warping as well. It'd be nice if I had a good welding table to clamp it down to, but the angle iron seemed to work alright. Got the mount set in place now. It's not bolted in yet, but it's sitting pretty close to the front of the skid plate, which I'm not real happy about, having this overhang right here with the weight on it, but I guess I could just weld it up, close it up. See how the drive shaft sits in here, because this is a clearance for the drive shaft to come through, but I'm not running any major lift on this, so may not even run a front drive shaft, I'm not sure yet. 2-wheel drive only. But that's how it looks in place. I just use the stock transmission bushing and transmission mount off the Durango. Crusty tranny pan, crusty body mounts, holes in the frame. We'll see if this thing stays together. Project may be for nothing. So what I've got here is the mount for the transmission shift cable. This is the stock mount that mounts on the 44 RE transmission from the Durango. So this is what the factory Durango shift cable would clip to. So it would pass through here, and then the cable would go to the arm on the transmission right over there somewhere. Pull it back and forth, pivoting off of this plate. So the Durango shift cable could have worked just fine with this plate, but the cable is a little bit longer than I would have liked it to be. So instead I'm going to use a TJ shift cable. The cable came out of a TJ with a 32 RH automatic transmission, which I believe comes in 97 to maybe 2000, 2001, 2002, somewhere in there. Maybe they're all the same all the way through the TJ years, I don't know. But this one's out of a TJ with a 32 RH transmission. It's very similar. It didn't quite fit. So basically the TJ cable needed to be spaced back towards the camera about 1.5 inches to work with this bracket. So I made this adapter kind of thing for the TJ cable. You can see 3 holes, 1, 2, 3, and corresponding holes on this piece. So it'll bolt together. I considered welding it, but figured it'd be nice to be able to just pull those bolts out instead of having to pull the whole bracket. If I can't get the clips for the transmission cable to come loose since they're pretty stiff, I just pop those 3 bolts out and this will come out with the cable, and I don't have to worry about pulling the clips off. So that'll go on there. You can see it's basically all cut out to the shape of the TJ cable, so it'll fit right in there and clip in. I ended up having to enlarge this hole a little bit on the Durango bracket to correspond with the holes on the adapter piece that I made. So we'll go take a look at where that's going to go now. You see, this is the shift arm, shift lever for the transmission. The cable clips right onto that ball, and the park is all the way towards the back of the transmission. First gear is all the way towards the front. So the stock Durango shift bracket goes into this hole, and this bolt also holds it on. Just going to set it in place for now. So basically that goes there. The cable comes down from the body, loops out this way and goes through. And this piece is just going to bolt on right there to bring this further back towards the front of the engine. So I made this out of some extra 1.5 inch square tubing, pretty thin wall stuff. I had it left over from an old exercise bench that I cut up. Looks like it'll work alright, so we'll give it a try. It is so thin wall that I may end up having to make a shim to go where the bracket clips in, because it's going to be a little loose, I think, with how thin this is. So I'll probably just cut another piece of this same square tubing and cut it out to the shape, kind of make a U shape around the hole, and I'll just slide it in to shim it, and that'll just be able to pop in and out as needed. But put the paint on pretty thick, so we'll see if that helped the case at all. I just installed the new transmission shift bracket. Again, this is just a piece of square tubing. I think it was 1.5 inches or 1.25 inches wide. Bolted onto the Durango stock bracket. Got the TJ cable in place now. Transmission's in park. The cable's connected to the shifter, and that's also in park. So it seems to be lining up pretty good. Right now I'm adjusting it to get it to hit park in the right location. So you can see this gap right here in the middle of the shift cable, which is where this pin goes. Basically, it's got some ridges on the inside of it that key into the shaft on the cable. kind of see them in there. You can see the two protruding clips on the outside of this piece at the top. Basically just squeeze those in with a pair of needle nose pliers, and then I pried it out the bottom. There's a couple little slots in the bottom where you can just fit the tip of a screwdriver in, pry it out. This one was pretty caked with mud, so took a little bit of working back and forth, but it eventually came out. I basically just made it so that the shifter inside the Jeep would hit park on the transmission just after it hit the park location. The other option would have basically been for it to be hitting park. It's totally maxed out. But I'm basically just going to slide this in here a little way, and then we'll check. I guess that actually didn't need to come out all the way, which I didn't realize at first. I was thinking that this was a twist piece, but the adjustable part just slides back and forth on the shaft. So this really only needs to be popped out about that far. But I'm going to just work it back in a little bit. Make sure I'm happy with the location before getting it in all the way. It is a little bit difficult to loosen. So it feels like it's starting to engage right here. I'm just going to go up to the shifter. Make sure that the park is not totally maxed out in either direction. Again, if we look at the position on here, we can see a notch, which is where the shifter goes into park. See, it is maxed out a little bit towards the reverse side of it. So I'm just gonna let this go. I'm gonna shift through a couple times, and we'll just see how it feels returning to park. If it feels good, I'll leave it. Otherwise, I'll adjust it a little bit. So I'm finding that it's hitting the gear just a little too soon, so I'm going to adjust it. Probably just one or two of those little notches on that lock piece. And we'll just double check again, and once I'm satisfied with it, I'll pop it in all the way. We'll be good to go.